What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back for another live stream. And the last live stream of 2024. I'm going to take a little break as we finish off the year. We got a lot of movies to cover here on the channel in the latter half, and I'm going to be pretty busy with other things as well as we get into the holidays and all that. But yeah, I wanted to kind of wrap things up as we do a bit of a follow-up for anybody who is watching this live or you watch it after the fact. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, I'm happy once again to be joined by Robert of Norin Radd89, as well as Chad Sabourin. The links to their channels and all that will be down below as usual, and we'll give that plug on the latter half as we typically do. But a few weeks ago now, maybe almost about a month ago at this point, during the Halloween spooky season, we covered Under Wraps from the late 90s, one of the earliest Disney Channel original movies, which was first time watch for Chad, but a revisit for Robert and I. There was some nostalgia there. There was a good, fun conversation on the celebration of Halloween. And of course, now we're literally a couple of weeks away from Thanksgiving or so. So it's kind of a weird time to be talking about some more Halloween stuff. But, fuck it. We're having fun with it. So today we're going to be talking about 2021's, I was trying to remember what year, 2021's remake of Under Wraps, the version that's currently on Disney Plus, where the original is not. And this movie actually got a sequel as well. So it's a remake to a classic Disney Channel original movie while also having its own sequel. And yeah, going into this, none of us had seen it. This was a first-time watch for all of us, I believe. And I'm very curious about your guys' thoughts. The base premise, just to kind of quickly touch on that, is very similar to the original film. 3 kids, one who's into horror, one that's a scaredy cat, and a girl who's kind of somewhere in the middle of all that. They end up going to this next door neighbor's house who has apparently stolen a mummy in a sarcophagus. They go down to his basement and they end up bringing this mummy to life, which eventually leads to them having this friendly mummy named Harold that follows them around throughout the course of the film. They eventually end up learning that if they don't get him back into his sarcophagus by Halloween night, after 3 days, he will turn to dust. And so they must now work together to try to save Harold from this inevitable doom. All right. So when we covered the first one, I think it went without saying that it was, a lot of fun to watch for the nostalgia purposes for Robert and I. But, it isn't it's not a great film. It's a fun film. It's got a fun idea, but the execution isn't great. And part of that is that it's made for TV. This one has the advantage of being made in 2021. And even though it's still made for TV, it is, I would say better shot and better put together in a lot of ways in terms of like the more modern day technology that's present. But man, this movie sucked. I did not have a good time watching this movie. Maybe it's that old man in me now that just feels like disconnected, because the movie is the original film, but it just felt like such a sanitized version of it. And it felt like just like the humor just didn't land. The characters just weren't as charming. The music that was playing in the background wasn't as charming. Again, it has better video quality. Like the original film feels like it was filmed like on a potato. This one feels like, it was filmed with like, at least high definition cameras. Yeah, we're going to talk about a lot, but Rob, I'll throw it to you first, man. Thoughts on this movie as a fan of the original one? How did you feel about this one?
Oh, let's see. If I had to describe this movie with one word, it would probably be cringe. It's very, very cringe. Like there's a lot of stuff in this movie. I would say just the modern jokes. Like I don't think I had a problem with the actual kid actors. It was more the writing in this one. It was just severely like the lowest kind of comedy you can go for kind of thing. It's like the very basic comedy that you think, oh, this is this comedy that'll get every little kid to laugh kind of thing, but it's just very cringe the way it lands. And even the performance of Harold, I wasn't as big on the performance of Harold. But yeah, in essence, like you were saying, Anthony, it is technically like the same movie, beat for beat, kind of story beat wise.
Yeah, it pretty much is. There's a couple of things that are different here that we'll definitely talk about. But yeah, cringe is a really good way to put it, man, because I was watching it with Rob of the Big Rob Theory. He came in maybe like 10 minutes into the movie. He goes, "What is this?" I go, "It's a remake of Under Wraps from when we were kids." He was like, "Oh," so he ended up sitting down and kind of like half watching the rest of the movie with me. And there was just so many moments of dialogue that we were just like, dude, it just made us roll our eyes. And the first film is so funny because the first film, and I think it's something about like the time frame, right? Something about the 90s was able to capture this like weird charm. I think with like the rise of things like Goosebumps or what's that one that was on Nickelodeon? Like
Are you afraid of the dark?
Are You Afraid of the Dark? Yeah, there was like this thing of like these kind of like light horror for kids kind of things. They had a charm to it. There was just something about the goofy acting and like the big flannel oversized shirts over the white t-shirt of the time. Like they just felt like the characters just there was a charm to it. Now there's something to like the modern day, like trying to be like a hokey pokey kind of like Disney movie that comes off just so cringe. So, Chad, as somebody who has no nostalgia for the original film, you
No.
did not have that nostalgia saving that first film for you at all. And you had some positives to say about it. There was a lot you enjoyed about it, despite not loving the film or really all that enjoying it. Where did this remake land for you? Do you think it was necessary at all?
No. I'll say this. The first one, yes, I did enjoy to an extent because some of the humor I did find hilarious, as I mentioned in the previous live stream. But yeah, this time around, I guess the best word to describe this movie for me is exhausting. I just watching it, I was like, this is 90 minutes. How is this movie 90 minutes? It feels so much longer. And going with what Rob was saying, I also agree. I do think that the cringe humor, but then I also wasn't a fan of the acting. Those three characters in the original, they felt as if the actors were all in tune of the type of movie that they knew they were in. This movie, it felt like these three characters, they were all in different type of movies, it felt like. And you felt that with the performances. And that I think really majorly affected my enjoyment because at the end of the day, it's a very simple premise that relies so heavily on these characters. And so it's like if you don't care about these characters, if the humor isn't landing, and there's no depth to them, then what do we have here? You then look at the filmmaking, and I wasn't a big fan of the filmmaking, honestly. I will go on the record as saying that I actually kind of prefer the cinematography of the original over this one. This has that like digital murky look to it that it feels very, very, very like modern, but not in like a good way. It's more of like a kind of way. But there was a charm to the cinematography of the original, even though the original, I want to say, wasn't anything special, but it at least looked like they were trying. But this one is like, oh, but it's my mini rant.
All right, all right. So we got the basis of our thoughts. It seems like none of us were fans of it, and it's.
I do want to see the second one out of curiosity.
I do want to see the second one, and I believe in that one. They obviously they must get Harold back out of that sarcophagus. I believe the romantic interest of Harold, who we saw at the end of the first film and at the first end of this one film as well. I believe she wakes up and she's a part of that movie as well. And that there's like an evil mummy that they have to face off against. Like there's like a villain based on the poster. It looks like it's Harold facing another like evil mummy. So,
the Batman v Superman of Under Wraps.
Yeah, right. There you go. and hopefully that'll be a little bit better because hopefully there'll be something new. Because I think the thing I struggled with the most with this movie is that they gave no reason for it to exist. If you're gonna do a remake, there was a couple of things they changed, like the Halloween party they go to at the end isn't just like this random Halloween party they stumble into. It's a school event. There's the goofy teacher who's dressed up as Cleopatra who ends up dancing with Harold at the end in this goofy way. Whereas in the first film, it was like this lady who was trying to like sex up Harold, the whole time. The tone was different there.
Yeah.
And one thing that was kind of like in terms of like the sanitized part of it was like that first film, like I like that one thing I think we all kind of collectively enjoyed was the fact that it leaned into kind of the love of horror and Halloween, especially through Marshall, the main kid. And you really felt like that guy in that first one liked horror. Like he really loved like scary stuff. And his room was kind of like cool and edgy for what it is. This one just felt like a sanitized version of that. And there's a couple references to like Bela Lugosi and some of the other characters from like previous like horror like films and stuff.
I was going to say, not to cut you off.
No, you're okay.
This one had horror movie references, which was nice, like Nosferatu,
right,
and like an actual mummy movie. But like, I was just so confused because this guy was saying that it was his favorite movie, and it's clearly a horror movie, and he's just like laughing at it. And I'm like, I'm sorry, like this movie is supposed to be serious, and you're like laughing at it, and the mom also is like, and I'm just like, what am I watching right now? Like,
Right, right.
I was so confused, man.
No, and I think that that's a big thing, right? It's like that part of like I remember when I watched that first one. Is like when I was a kid, I used to think, "Oh man, Marshall's room is so cool. This kid is so cool." Like it was kind of like, especially since I was young, I was like kind of getting into like the soft core horror stuff, that wasn't like overly scary. I was kind of dipping my toes in that world, and so watching the movie, it was just kind of like, here we are with like the sanitized. I hate to put it that way, but this sanitized version that even something like some of the jokes about like I remember Chad, you mentioned like there was like that joke with like the young girl like making a joke about her bra and that she wears a bra in the first
Yeah.
film and these different things. And like this
Yeah.
film just like felt like it just didn't have like that grit. Like it felt so safe and like kind of like cookie cutter and just like generic. One thing that I appreciated a little bit more that they expanded upon more was the romantic interest of the mom that we're
That's
introduced
true,
to. Like
Yeah, I did like that. I
Ted,
credit
yeah,
where credit's due.
he had a little bit more screen time, and I felt like they made you at least care for his character enough. You knew where it was going because we've already seen the first one, and it's a cliche kind of move. But it was like, all right, when he finally was like, "Hey, come on in," at the end, it was like, all right, the actor who played him was nice. He was charming. There's no
yeah.
real complaints there.
And also
Um,
another positive, what few there are of this movie, is that my main issue with the original Under Wraps was that they had the gangster plot thread that just felt like shoehorned in because it was like
Yeah.
around the halfway mark. This, I felt like they introduced it a lot sooner, which was nice,
right.
and it made a lot more sense to me. And I was like, okay, that works, but everything else doesn't.
Right. Yeah. They actually like do something with that. So if I had to say my biggest positives in the movie would be stuff like that. Like the villain is introduced and used more often throughout. The Ted relationship thing there is a little bit is better. And I think there's elements like the just like the cinema. I think the cinematography, I guess, for me looks at least a little bit better. And maybe it's because just like the old one just looks so grainy, but there is a charm to it undeniably. But Rob, we'll throw it off to you first. I want to hear like specifically what you guys think are like the big positives from this movie. Is there anything that you think about this movie that is maybe better than the original film?
I would say for me, I think the original one is more like spooky and, like you said, has that 90s nostalgia and the way that it pulls all the horror fandom into it. But I think like the Halloween party at the end of this one, I think the Halloween atmosphere is actually stronger in this one because we have like more costumes. There's more emphasis on decorations and like trick or treating and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like this one has a stronger Halloween atmosphere. I do like that. Um, I did like the Ted thing. I thought that, to be honest, if they wanted to improve that a little bit more, they could have made Ted the guy that they would have had to go to get all the information for the mummy. So basically, take that character that they went to in the kind of second and third acts, the girl character, if they would have
Right.
took her out and just switched that for Ted because he's such a monster enthusiast or he's into monster films and all that kind of stuff. I think that would have been
Right.
a better plot thread. And then you could have had that tussle with Marshall and Ted. He's like, "Oh, I don't really want his help." And then the girl could have been like, "Well, he's trying to help us. He's a cool guy. Like, let's let him tag along and help us." And that could have made an more interesting dynamic, I think, in the third act.
Robert, you just
Yeah.
made me hate the movie even more because what you just pitched is far better. I like that too because that's more enriching in terms of the character. I like that. Yeah, because he's really into horror. Yeah, like
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was kind of right there.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that, and especially with him trying to help them with their little movies, because I actually like the fact that they make a little movie. That was
I
another
like
thing
that
too.
too.
Like I thought that was kind of fun. Like that was a new element that was added in this version of the story. So yeah, I kind of feel like with him helping them earlier in the film with like bringing the costumes around and stuff like that, that it would have almost kind of worked a little bit better to have had him kind of be a more integral part of the movie in the end. And honestly,
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the character, but I liked that chubby funny dude that like they go to for questions at that like spooky
Oh
store.
yeah, in the original one,
Yeah,
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 he
yeah.
was good. Yeah.
He was fun. The one that they replaced him with here, the woman that they replaced him with here was just cringe. I mean, she was just like not hitting the mark for me. She didn't give off like that guy gave off like I know my stuff because I'm dweeby and I stay in my mom's basement and it acts like he just had a great character kind of like archetype. Whereas this one was just kind of like the like, let's just get like a dweeby looking chick to just say some dweeby things. And it just never came off like genuine. So I mean, Chad, I'll throw it off to you now. What were your big positives with this movie? Is there anything that you think it does better than the original film?
I think the movie references are a lot better. I know I mentioned briefly like Nosferatu, like I did like seeing that on screen as well as like the Mummy and everything, and I did think that that was at first rather nice, where it's like, oh wow, homage to the movie, and at the same time, like it works in the context of the story because the Mummy himself is literally looking at it. It's like, oh yeah, that's me, but then it got ruined because of the like, oh, it's my favorite movie, and then started laughing. I did like the filmmaking aspect of how the kids were really into it and they wanted to make it so that way it was like a project for school. I liked that, and I think it also made sense as to why the mom never really thought much that like, oh, this is an actual mummy, because it's like, oh no, he's just in makeup and everything. Like, so she didn't think at all that, oh, there was trouble afoot, if you will. Trying to think what else I liked. Well, Rob covered some of the positives that I was also thinking about, so I think I'm out, unfortunately, Anthony.
No, you're good. You're good, man. Well, one thing I definitely want to get your guys' takes on, and Chad, I'll start with you this time around, is the makeup on Harold. I think they went a different approach here. The actor they chose was an actual man of color this time around. So they changed the skin tone of what he would look like dead. He looks more like what a real mummy would look like in terms of skin tone.
Yeah.
But I also think that was partially because the actual actor was a black man as well. And for the most part, I like the actor that they chose here. I think he does a good job. My favorite scene with him is the scene where he's alone in the house. And he's like in the mirror, like kind of scaring himself. Like it's those moments where he was able to be kind of goofy and charming that kind of reminded me a little bit of what I enjoyed about the first one. I personally don't like the makeup here nearly as much as the makeup and the mask that they use in the first film. There's a part of it that is better because it feels like it has that modern touch to it, but there's a part of it that just felt like almost too, I don't know. I don't really know how to really fully explain it, but
like a clean look to it, where there's not the original had it where there was creativity to it. It felt as if there was a lot of makeup artists that put a lot of hard work to make it seem like, hey, he was in the ground for a couple thousand years. Versus the makeup in this, I liked it to an extent, but I do think that it does look a little too clean when it really shouldn't, because this dude was in the, what is an esophagus? Oh, no, that's what they said in the movie. Sarcophagus. They said that. they said that, and it's like he was there for a couple thousand years. So it's like you're not going to look as if you're getting ready to go to a Halloween party. You're going to look disgusting looking. And I think the first one did that better. But I think the biggest issue is that I didn't mind the performance of the mummy. I just think that the original, there was just a goofy charm to it, so it was more memorable because it was just so unhinged. But this one, it felt just very safe, and that, I don't know, to me that's just unmemorable. Like, I already have kind of forgotten the performance, unfortunately.
Yeah, I can't say I disagree. There wasn't anything to it that felt like really fresh, like there's something to that original one, like even just like in small moments when they're like, kind of having these heart-to-heart moments. There's these moments in the first one, especially like when they're gonna like put him back in his sarcophagus, where like between him and Marshall near the end, like actually kind of make you feel something a little bit between the characters. This one, I never felt that connection between any of the characters and Harold. It never really felt like that friendship had kind of been built upon. And honestly, I don't know if it's just me kind of like looking for problems, but did anybody else find it problematic that they have a mummy that's played by a black man and he's obsessed with hot sauce? Like something about that just for me just came across like he's like so kind of like questionable. Like hot sauce is his favorite thing in this movie. Like he's chugging bottles of hot sauce, and of course it's a black man inside.
Oh, so like, this is kind of a me thing, Anthony.
Yeah,
I don't actually know, because you follow me on YouTube. I love hot sauce. Hot sauce is part of my rating system on my YouTube channel.
Right.
And that hot sauce that he chose is so mild. So the fact that he had that reaction, I was like, this guy was literally in Egypt, and you're telling me that this mild hot sauce has this kind of effect to him? I'm like, no, come on now. Like, but I didn't think about what you're saying, because that could be looked at as problematic.
Yeah, it just seemed like a strange choice, like I don't really know why they would go that route of everything. And I watched it with Rob, who is a black man. He was like, really? The black guy, the black mummy loves hot sauce? Like, it just seemed so like, okay, dude, like maybe
especially because they stuck to the original so much with all these other aspects, but then when they actually veer a different direction, it's like,
Right. It's
Okay.
like, it's not the end of the world, but it's just kind of like it's questionable. Well, Rob, what about you? How did you feel about Harold in this film? How did you feel about the makeup, all that jazz?
I feel like the makeup, to describe it, it felt very like Spirit Halloweeny or like Party City. Like that's the way the makeup kind of looked. You know what I mean? It looked like very,
Yeah.
like a good expensive costume, but it looked like a costume. And that's one word to describe a lot of the set pieces in this film. Is it looked like set pieces? You know what I mean? Like even though it kind of looked modern or up to date or like they had more money, you can just tell, like looking at it, it just had that look to it. It was, like I said, too clean. It was just everything was too nice. Even their house, like the house was way too nice. Like I have a house, I have kids. It's not gonna look that nice. It ain't gonna look that nice ever in your house. Like I can tell you that right now. So certain elements like that I thought were funny, like not, but Harold's makeup, yeah, it's just very much like a Party City design. I think the dance sequence was funny. I was laughing. I was actually into the dance sequence at the end. That was funny. But yeah, the hot sauce thing that kind of ruined it because that's part of the reason why I kind of messed up the third act thing because we already knew we were going to get the whole kind of like, oh, maybe that moment where he hands them the necklace. Instead, like the kid like leaves him the bottle of hot sauce and it turns it into a joke.
Yeah.
It wasn't cute anymore. It didn't make it wholesome, or it's just like, all right, really? You're trying to go for one more laugh with the hot sauce? Like, come on now.
No, that's so true. And I also, as soon as that scene ended, I don't know if you guys caught it, but like when they break into the museum, the alarm is going off, and then when that whole sequence with the love interest, like the woman mummy being
Yep.
awoken, there's no alarm, and then the second that they say goodbye to Harold, the alarm is blaring as they're running out. I was just like, dude, this movie is just like it just felt like it didn't have the passion that made the first one at least a charming watch. It felt like, and it's interesting because one thing we haven't mentioned yet is this movie comes from director Alex Zamm, who has directed Woody Woodpecker, the movie from 2017, Inspector Gadget 2, the one where they recast Inspector Gadget, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he also did one of the he did Jingle All the Way 2 as well, with Larry the Cable Guy, and I believe he did one of the what's it called? One of the Beverly Hills Chihuahua movies. So, like, the guy has directed movies that like aren't necessarily the best, but he's directed things that are at least a little bit better. And it just felt like, I don't know, like
I wonder
this.
if COVID had something to do with it because it came out in 2021, so they probably filmed it in 2020. And I do wonder if, because piggybacking off what Rob said, I wasn't going to say anything, but what Rob said is accurate. It did feel like all the sets felt like sets. It didn't feel lived in and everything. But at the same time, when I was watching it, I kind of gave it a pass because I was like, it came out in 2021, so it probably was a COVID film. They probably the only way they were able to shoot this film was probably on like a lot of green screens and everything. Not saying that that's an excuse, but I think that was just the reality of it. So
Yeah, and it was right at the beginning of Disney Plus, so there's definitely that element as well where it's like I feel like maybe this movie was the victim of like, hey, we need content for this platform that we're creating, and it's like, like let's just get as many, this and that we can just to kind of throw together. Oh yeah, like hey, let's get this director to just remake one of our classic movies, and maybe it just kind of like ruins some of the like creative juices behind the scenes. Now, one thing I would definitely want to hear about is your guys' biggest negatives. Now, we've already been talking about our negatives throughout this whole thing, so it is messy. If I had to say my biggest negatives about the movie in general was it lacked charm. It just didn't have that heart to it. The performances were atrocious at times, like and the dialogue followed suit. And something that I think the first film had that really worked for it was like it was comedic and cartoony when it came down to Harold, but the movie in a lot of ways felt grounded. It had that like, letting your mom move on from a divorce storyline, though it was a smaller part of the film. It had like this, kind of like meeting like an unlikely friend in Marshall with Harold. It just had like a charm to it. There's that kind of like sweet little goofy romance that kind of builds between the Marshall and Amy by the time you get to the end. But for me, the thing that was so frustrating to me was how goofy the finale was when like freaking Harold is like Captain America punching the enemies like through walls. There's that there's that one guy he sends up to like the second story that like busts through the railing and keeps going. Like I was thinking, dude, that guy's dead. Like that guy is absolutely dead.
Harold's
And
a
there was
killer now.
right, yeah, Carol's out here killing people, and there was like that moment too, where like even earlier when we meet like the buyer in this movie who's gonna buy who wants to buy Harold, and when she tells the bad guy like, find that mummy or you're gonna have problems and it's gonna hurt, and he looks back at like her bodyguard and it's just this woman that's like with her neck cracking, like it was just so it felt so cartoony and goofy in the wrong ways, and it took away the like charm and like the grounded nature of the first film. So, Robert, I'll start with you. Like, what were your biggest negatives in the film?
I thought it was kind of funny that you brought that up though too, that side boss chick lady like character, because they had that scene where she was like eating the octopus or like a squid or something. I was like, why is this in here? I was like, for a second, I was like, why are we watching this? Like, no one else is in this room. Like, it's just us sitting in this room with this girl watching her eat this octopus. I was like, what's going on here? But yeah, there's a lot of questionable choices. So I thought it was weird that they wanted to stick so close to the original, but then all the elements that they did try to add, like you said, the hot sauce thing or certain other elements, it just kind of made the film, yeah, like you said, cringy and not good. We do like the fact that like the bad guy does show up sooner, so I do like that too. That was another thing we brought up. But yeah, there's so much bad acting. The lines I thought were like I don't think I'd laughed once at an actual line for the purpose of the line. It was more just like laughing at it, like I can't believe somebody actually said this. So like they wrote this down. I'm like, damn. But another thing is, yeah, the third act was pretty bad. That was another thing too, that like when they started doing that, I was like, I felt like we were watching some kind of Marvel movie thing at the end, and I was like, what, why are we doing this? Like, I understand he's supposed to be super strong, but like I said, they made him very, very strong astronomically, which is weird.
Yeah, he sends that one dude through the ceiling. Like that one guy should have been dead. And even like when Marshall pulls the like string to bring the skull down and kind of like hits the bad guy and the buyer, like they go flying like cartoon characters. And then he's like,
Was there an after credit scene?
I don't. If there was, I didn't stick around. Did one of you guys watch it?
No,
Well,
I
I
don't
was
think
just
so.
gonna, I was just gonna say, I wouldn't be surprised if at the very end it said Harold will return in the latest MCU movie, like something like that. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
he's
I
all
guess
Captain America in this.
honestly, man, he really was just. I was so surprised at like how much they leaned into like him just busted ass at the end. What about you, Chad? Biggest negatives you have for this movie?
So I'll preface it like this. I respect the craft of filmmaking. I think it's amazing the fact that a couple hundred, if not thousands, of people come together to create a movie. But at the same time, I feel like those hundreds of thousands of people kind of made something that just maybe shouldn't have existed. So I would just say the whole movie exists. I think here's my thing. If I just saw this movie without any preface of the original, maybe I would be a lot more kind to it. Not a lot, but maybe a little bit more. But the fact that the original is so hard to find and the original is much better is something that rubbed me the wrong way. And I was thinking about it around the halfway mark of watching the movie because instead of making a movie just for the fact that it's quote unquote content, instead of actually having it where it's like the original, where it's people coming together that actually want to make something special, just release the original, release it on Disney Plus, so that way millions of new people can discover that, or also have it where it's on physical media and everything. Like stuff like that is something that I think they should have done. But because this movie exists as it stands, just the whole movie is a negative for me. There's like little positives here and there that I can think of, but the whole movie, it doesn't work. Every single aspect you can think of just doesn't work.
Yeah, no, I couldn't disagree more. Like it seems like we all just really are not fans of this movie because like for me it was just so disheartening watching it to just see like such a neutered version of a better movie. And I do think it really sucks that we live in this world where that original film is so difficult to find. And I know we joked last time about like, all
Well,
the direct. Yeah, go ahead.
I
Sorry.
also, not to cut you off, I wanted to ask Rob, did you because I know you said you have kids, did you watch this movie like with them? Because I'm very curious to hear
Yeah.
younger audiences like opinion of this movie, honestly.
Oh, see, so I didn't watch this new one with them. I watched the original one with my son, but this new one, I actually got this one in while I was at work. Don't tell
Um,
him. Yeah, no, I work graveyards, and sometimes I get a lot of time at night where I'm like cleaning or doing stuff, and then I'll pop a movie on the phone, and that's when I was watching this one. But while I was watching it, I kind of was like, was Chad was saying, I was trying to set myself aside and be like, all right, what if I experienced this first? What if I didn't see the original and I just was like, oh, what's this? Under Wraps? Like, let's watch this one. I was kind of trying to do that while I was watching it, but then every time like a certain line happened or every time a certain choice happened, it would just suck me right out of it. And I was like, no, this isn't good. Like, I can't put on the rose tinted glasses for this.
Yeah,
that's
no,
what
I can.
that's what I'm curious about. Like 20, 30
Right.
years from now, are there going to be kids that grew up with this movie and it meant a lot to them, or is it the type of thing where even kids watch this movie and they're like, "What is this? What is this?" I am curious about that.
I think
Yeah.
that's a big factor too. Something that was interesting, and I think it's because the kids were young, so they make a reference to it at a certain point. But like, yeah, you do have this mummy walking around, you have all this stuff going on, and nobody ever pulls out a phone. So there was like that element of like, I know the kid said at a certain point, like, oh, my dad doesn't let me have a phone. But it was kind of crazy to me that in the modern day that they didn't try to like bring this more into the modern day, like bring in elements that are specific to how the world is today. It just felt like let's just make the same story the same way, like like even
Well, you
down
know
to the
why,
ice
right?
cream factory at the end. Why is that?
It wouldn't work. Like
Right, of course, of course.
Harold would be found within 2 minutes. Like you would have like some kid
Yeah.
like taking a video and having it upload on like TikTok, and then millions of people know about him. And that's like, wait a minute, and that's like, wait a minute, we're only 10 minutes into the movie. That's why.
Right. I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. It's just interesting that they even outside of that, like security footage or anything like that, they just kind of skirted past any of the stuff that could have been like interesting, that they could have made this feel different. Because I feel like the fact that this film exists, it's just like, could you have done to make it different? And there's just not enough. And then the cast of characters or the cast of kids that they got in this movie are just not that interesting at all. Like, especially the actor that they chose for Gilbert, he was just so annoying. The high pitched voice half the time. It was just like that scene near the end with him, like the obsession randomly with the panda.
The panda with the pink star, whatever, the pink heart. Yeah.
Yeah, which was just like what him wanting to win that game, and then him Tarzan swinging for the amulet at the end, and then perfectly on the first toss, like no wind up, just like threw it perfectly, getting it around Harold's like neck. It's just like it just begs the question of why. Because yeah, I would be curious, like Chad said, to know what kids think about this movie. Because are there going to be those kids that have the nostalgia that if they hear about Under Wraps, they're like, oh yeah, I love that one I saw when I was a kid.
Especially because there's a sequel, so that means there could be an audience for this remake. Like it. Although I think what probably happened was, if I were to deduce correctly, I think that a lot of older people, such as ourselves, probably went on Disney Plus and saw the title Under Wraps and were like, "Oh yeah, I remember that movie growing up. This is cool. This is cool. Let's watch this." And then they start watching and they're like, "Wait a minute, this isn't what I grew up with." That could be why the first one was a mild success to warrant a sequel, but I don't know if kids themselves actually like this movie, and I'm so curious.
Right. On Letterbox, it doesn't have great score, which unsurprisingly, most people on Letterbox are adults. But it just, man, it's one of those movies that watching it, it was just like, what was the vision here? So speaking on the vision, obviously we've talked about the things we don't like. We talked about the things we do like. A lot of the things we do like have still been wrapped in a lot of things we don't like. So we're obviously not fans of this movie. But Rob kind of brought up something earlier in terms of like something he thought could have really elevated the film with Ted's inclusion. So Rob, I'll start with you. What do you really think, outside of what you've already mentioned, what do you really think this movie needed to have warranted its existence?
Ooh, that is a good question. I think this one, they probably I think could have leaned more into just having like atmosphere, like actual like haunting atmosphere, making it feel like a little bit creepy. Like I feel like some of the moments in that first film, there's actually like creepy moments. In this one, I'm not like scared. There's no creepiness. There's nothing like that. There's Halloween atmosphere, but it's like I went to a Halloween store and there's Halloween stuff everywhere. Like that's how it felt, kind of thing. Not like I was sucked into the movie. So I think, to be honest, it felt very much like almost like an AI script. So if they had more personal touch with somebody, just any writer that wanted to put a little spin on it, like I said, with adding the Ted relationship, making that more of a dynamic thing. Also, the bad guys, I think, to be honest, if they wanted to add that female lead character or the other bad character, then they probably should have had her in it a little bit more. And then you could have had maybe that subplot of the tussle between Kubat and her, because it really only comes up towards the end once Kubat finds out that he actually is a real live mummy and he's not dead. But other than that, just more attention to detail. That could have been another thing that could have helped out, and better writing for sure. I would have went for, like I said, better writers that actually wanted to commit and kind of focus on more of the side plots that would, I think, elevated this film, because I think the story in itself is very basic. It's all the side stuff that you would have had to improve to make it a little better.
Nice, nice. No, you bring up some really, really good points. I'll throw in for me, recast those kids because the kids they chose not good, man. Like, and the thing is that with kid actors, it's tough, right? Like, you can have some cheesy kid actors that don't work, but every here and there, you see these kid actors that you're just like, man, even in a cheesy movie, that they at least captured charm. I recently saw a Christmas movie called "The Best Christmas Pageant Ever," and I didn't give it like a high score. I didn't love it, but I thought it was a cute, good, fun time for families. I thought it was totally what it was supposed to be. And there was a performance from a young girl in that movie, whose name escapes me right now because I don't have notes in front of me, but she she did a really good job. She brought a lot of heart and charm, and what worked about that film really worked a lot of times because of her. And it's like I think a really strong kids in this movie really, really, really could have made this work a lot better. What about you, Chad? I know that you're already like somebody who's pretty adamantly against the idea of remakes as a whole. I don't mind remakes too much, dependent, but I know that sometimes, I've heard you say on certain reviews for certain remakes or stuff like that, that it's not really your favorite kind of thing.
I'm
Um,
against remakes of movies that already are great.
right,
So,
right.
like for
I
instance,
remember that for when we covered Lady and the Tramp together as well, which you were not a
yes,
fan of the remake that they did. So
because the
what do
original was
you
charming. It was,
yeah,
and
I
under
agree.
wraps, I will say I did go in with an open mind. I did say, who knows? Maybe it will fix a lot of the issues that I had with the original, but it fixed like one or two things, and then everything else it went backwards instead of forward. And I think that's what you need for a remake. But I agree with all of the points you guys made, especially Rob, with the boyfriend character. Like that, I think would have made the movie a lot better. But I'll piggyback off Rob's comment about the horror elements, because yeah, the original, you can make the argument that it's a horror movie because it does feel spooky at times. I mean, even just the opening scene, like it's establishing the world of this movie and how, yeah, there are going to be spooky elements. This movie didn't really do that. There wasn't any like camera movement or even the score, or the camera angles where I felt any possible sense of fear. So I think that they really should have leaned a little bit towards that instead of going for like a squeaky clean rating, because I don't know what this was rated, but if I were to guess, it'd be like a very, very, very light PG. But the original had a little bit of an edge to that PG. So I would just say, bottom line, emphasize the horror a bit more, and then recast the actors, and just I don't know. I want to see the sequel though. I do. Are we going to be reviewing it? I meant to ask.
Yeah, yeah. So the plan is, I am taking a break from live streams for 2024 just to focus now on like trying to catch up as many 2024 releases as we get to the end. While everybody starts to build their top 10 best and worst of the year, I want to have as many 2024 movies under my belt so that I feel like I have like a decent personal consensus. And what I love that this time of year because while
Me
all
too.
of us have seen the big popular stuff, right? I'm sure the three of us can list off movies that we've all seen that are the big popular movies that everybody's going to see. I'm sure that all three of us have also seen a ton of niche films of 2024 this year, that will either make our top 10 best or top 10 worst, that maybe some of us have seen, but maybe not everybody has seen. So I want to try to get as many under my belt before 2024 is over. So to do that, I need a little bit less time doing like certain things. So live streams, and plus it's hard with like getting people's schedules. To answer your question, though, this long-winded response. Yes. So the plan is once we come back in January with live streams, I will be finishing series that I've done for live streams, like Twitches. I did the first Twitches during Halloween, but I will be having my two guests, Crosby Critic and D Movie Man, back to talk about Twitches 2, Twitches TOO 2. Then I will also be doing Lion King 1.5 with Mike of Did You See That and Rashad G Reviews. And then I'll be having you guys back on as well to talk about Under Wraps 2. So in January, we'll take a little time away from Under Wraps, from Harold and the kids, and then we'll get back to see how we feel about it after the new year. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that one because I feel like, all right, all bets are off now, right? It's a situation where it's not a situation where we are retreading the same material. This one felt like its job was to tell that same movie from the first one over again. They can't do that now. They can't rely on that for the sequel. They need to create a new story, a new situation. So yeah, now that we've talked about this movie, I'm actually curious to hear you guys' thoughts a little bit here on the latter half. And Chad, I'll start with you. What do you want to see in the remake's sequel that you think could buy you back into this set of movies right here?
Edginess in the humor. I feel like the edginess of the humor of the original really enhanced that movie, and it was sorely lacking in this one. Better dynamics between the three lead characters, not feeling as if they're all three in different movies. I think also, going with what you're saying, all bets are off. I think that the fact that, if I'm not mistaken, the second one was made when COVID ended. So I'm hoping that I won't be able to turn a blind eye with the filmmaking of like the cinematography and the production design. I'm hoping that those aspects are better now that they're actually able to maybe shoot on location or have better lighting and everything. So those are some of the aspects I would say. I think that there is potential for it to be a lot better, and I'm hoping that that's the case. But fingers crossed.
Yeah, no, fingers crossed. I agree. What about you, Rob? Anything that you want to see in the sequel?
I'll go crazy. I hope they go balls to the wall since they did that whole like Captain America, like Marvel style ending with his powers, and we're possibly gonna have a villainous mummy character. Like, I want like epic battles, man. I want weapons. I want the love interest to get involved. Like, because like you said, there's all bets are off now. All chains are off. There's no handcuffs. I want them to go for broke and let's just see what they can do. And I hope that the three lead characters do feel more natural now that they're in a second film. Maybe they've gotten used to each other. Maybe they found a way, like said Chad was saying, to have a more dynamic, to feel like actual friends. Because that was one thing I forgot to mention in the first movie, that the three kids feel like actual real kids. They feel like friends that you would meet on the street. These three kids, they did feel like actual characters. You know what I mean? Not actual kids.
Right. No, I couldn't agree more. Honestly, that's kind of like, and Chad said that, you said that. It's like that was a big thing for me with this film. It's like they don't feel like friends, and some things that they changed just felt like it kind of ruined that dynamic a little bit, right? Like in the first one, the girl already knows them. She's already kind of like an established friend with them. And this one is just kind of like, two friends that kind of get get this girl that's awkwardly kind of paired with them.
She's the new girl in town. Yeah, and she wants to be a journalist. She wants to be an investigative journalist.
Right, exactly. She wants to be an investigative journalist, and it just doesn't feel ever that like I don't know, like they ever really do much. Real quick on the side here, I just wanted to pull this up. Let me see. I don't really ever do this much on here, so we're doing something different on here. So here, just quickly, you can see that that's what the poster looks like. So it looks like Harold is going off against whoever that other mummy is, and it looks like the romantic interest looks like she's a bigger part of the movie as well there in the corner. And the kids look a little bit more aged up. So my only hope, honestly, is that they just really give these kids more to do. And kind of like what you were saying, go balls to the wall, man. I want to see these two mummies like having like an Iron Man, Captain America fight. Like, let's go. let's make it like a freaking Hulk versus Abomination and the Incredible Hulk kind of situation. Just like two titans just going fisticuffs. And hopefully just do more, man. They just do more with what they had because ultimately they just didn't do enough. And it's funny because like one thing we talked about in that last stream, because we hadn't seen the remake yet, is like if we were to get this remade by any director, who would we want it to be made by? Chad threw out the best option with freaking Steven Spielberg. And it's like one of those things where like you would think that the people who are making these movies that put the money behind making these movies would have this thought process of like, even if we can't get a Steven Spielberg, we saw that, why not have the ability to be like, there's magic here. With the right director, with the right vision, with the right tone, we can create something magical. And ultimately they just made something that just felt so cookie cutter and basic. And yeah, like you guys said, it's like not funny at all either. Like the only scene in the movie that made me laugh, ironically, is the scene where the Gilbert is talking to the owl and he says, "Who?" And he turns around and he's like, "Marshall, that's who." Like it was so stupid.
Oh,
Nice.
man.
But
Nice.
it's just I don't know, man. It just really it lacked heart. I think I can be super forgiving of films as long as they have that heart and that charm. And sometimes it's just one just didn't have it. Really quickly, I just so they're not ignored. David Pictures GD popped in here to say hi, and Real Black One popped in saying hola. Hey, how's it going, guys? Thank you so much for watching. Yeah, for this movie, and if anybody's watching and you've seen this movie or you have kids and you've shown them this movie, please chime in and let us
Yeah.
know what you guys think about this movie as well. But yeah, man, it just really lacked everything. I almost feel like we're running out of things to say at this point because we're all kind of on the same page. And I
Yeah.
just hope that the second one really has something new and fresh to say ultimately. So honestly, I don't have an abundance more to say. Obviously, it's a little bit less than the time that we talked about how long we'd go, but I'd rather this be a more natural conversation than something we're pushing to go further. So do you guys have anything else that you want to add? Something that you have any extra thoughts on this movie?
Mm, I would say no. Thank you for introducing this project because it is fun, Anthony, to go through this stuff and like actually watch these movies because these are certain types of films I like, especially that first one, like going back and like reliving that. Like I said, that original '90s one, I'm gonna make that kind of a reoccurring spooky season thing and stuff, and then maybe in the future. Under wraps this one and the second one, maybe they'll grow nostalgia. Maybe something will grow there. You know what I mean? Because I'll like remember you guys remember these moments. But so I'm thankful for like you introducing this project for us. I think that was a really cool idea.
Yeah,
I
man, for
agree.
sure. It's been a lot of fun, dude. I love doing these projects with people because you get a chance to kind of sit down. Like in our day-to-day, we get so lost in working, and I'm sure there's friends that we can talk movies with. But a lot of times they want to talk about like the Deadpool and Wolverines of the world, the big popular stuff, and then
Yeah.
they don't care about the rest. So it's nice to be able to just like watch like a niche film and just talk with some movie friends, and just kind of be able to. Here we are talking about three grown men talking about
Under wraps.
the Disney Channel original movie from 2021 that was not made for us at all. That we can just kind of have fun with it, man. So absolutely, and I'm grateful that you guys decided to be on.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I mean, I agree 100% with what Rob's saying. I mean, I think it's very important that, of course, you want to try to seek out really good movies, and of course, we all come across mediocre movies, but it's also important to watch bad movies because then it makes you appreciate the good movies that much more. That's definitely the case with Under Wraps. Like, I'm still standing by my original rating of the original Under Wraps, but it also makes me appreciate that movie much more because I saw a much worse version of that. So I'm like, okay, so yeah, let's stick with the original.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. It really is one of those things that sometimes can kind of shift your perspective. And sometimes, there's certain things that can save it, and even if the sequel or the remake is lesser, but then there's just some things that just do not have that saving grace. And unfortunately, this was one of them. So, with all that said, it seems like we were all three of us not fans of Under Wraps, the remake. But guys, stay tuned in January. These two great guys will be back once again to talk about Under Wraps 2. And we will definitely have, I'm sure, a lot of thoughts hopefully more to say on that one because this one is just such a cookie cutter remake of the first one with only these slight little different elements. that there isn't much to say. So I hope that we have more to say with a fresh story, fresh set of, hopefully some new characters, obviously a new villain that's going to be thrown in the mix. So I'm excited to see what they do there. But Robert, I'll start off with you really quickly. Anything that you want to plug over on your channel, anything you got going on? Again, everybody, the links to both of these guys are down below in the description box. So go give them some love. Let them know I sent you. Go to Rob's channel. Where am I looking? Go to Rob's channel. Go to Rob's channel for top tier horror and spooky related things and all kinds of other movie fun TV show content as well. Go to Chad's channel for top tier directors ranking list and movie reviews and all kinds of cool fun stuff like that. But Rob, anything that you want to plug on your channel or anything you want to say?
Oh, definitely. I'm going to be having some more Courage the Cowardly Dog deep dives. That's currently the TV show that I'm going through right now with my buddy Steve. So I'll be doing that. Those more episodes will be dropping. And also I've been tackling now for November, like the last 2 weeks, I'm going to do a extreme horror. So some of the most extreme stuff I've ever watched. I don't know. I just felt like it, even though it's like the family season, it's supposed to be this wholesome time. I'm going to talk about some of the hardest watches that I've ever had to watch. Some are really good movies. They're just really hard to watch. And some are really bad and also really hard to watch. So I was going to talk about those. And then I want to start my Forgotten Final Girls project. So I'm going to start that pretty soon, where each episode I'm going to talk about a final girl that I think is just totally forgotten, you know, that's not up there, talked about with the Lauries and the Nancys of the world.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. That sounds really exciting. I'm looking forward to hearing which extreme horror films that you're talking about, because there's a lot of them out there, and I'm knowing you, I'm sure you found the deep cuts. So I'm looking forward to it. It should be pretty fun. Chad, what about you, man? Anything you want to plug over on your channel?
Yeah. So tomorrow I'm releasing my 1993 Academy Award Best Picture nominees, like ranked video. The week after, I currently am going through my series of top 250 films, like releasing that. So that part, it's my number 151 to 200 that I'll be releasing. And then to end the month, I'm doing a special video. It's called 2014, A Year in Film That Changed Me. So basically just a time to reflect on all the films that changed me in 2014. But yeah, just I would say to people watching, just be on the lookout. I do a lot of top 10 videos. Every now and then I'll do movie reviews. Don't do as much, but follow me on Letterboxd. I do post movie reviews every day. And as Anthony said, more than a lot of other people.
Yeah. You watch a lot of movies, man. At this point, I gave up on trying to catch up, but I'll try to catch up at least a little bit by the time we get to the end of 2024. And then we'll get started on the next year, and the number will drop back down to 0, and it's time to start over. And knowing all three of us, we're going to be watching tons of movies. I look forward to all the fun stuff we have coming in the coming year. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of good stuff, but let's focus on this year, I guess, for now. But a big thanks to these guys for joining. A big thanks to you guys watching, whether you watched live and you tuned in and you commented, or you just watched from chilling at home, or you watched just after the fact, whatever the case may be. Thank you guys so much. You guys can find the links to both these guys down below, so go give them some love. And lastly, for me, just dropped a review this morning for The Brutalist, which is an A24 3-hour and 35-minute long film with an intermission in the middle and an epilogue at the end that I got to check out yesterday, quite a bit early. The film comes out in December in limited release. So please check out that review. It is a bit of a longer review, but it's also a very long movie. So there was a lot to say. No spoilers, though. Don't worry about it. So that's a movie I'm very curious to hear people's opinions on. I also have a review recently that went up for Red One that came out this weekend. I got to see that a tad bit early, which is getting fairly divisive reviews right now. I was on the more positive side of things, but some people have claimed it to be one of the worst films of the year. So I think it's really going to be dependent on your personal taste. And then on Sunday, I will have a review out, or not Sunday, I'm so sorry. Sunday, I'll be watching Wicked, but the embargo for me to drop my review is on Tuesday. So look out for my review of Wicked on Tuesday. And then I think I have to look to see if there's an embargo for it. But on Tuesday night, I'll be seeing Gladiator 2. So there'll be an early review out for that as well. So big thanks to everybody for watching. Follow these guys, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys so much. We'll be back in January for Under Wraps 2. Thank you guys again for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.
Later.